This is Schonbrunn Palace in Vienna, built in Habsburg dynasty. The House of Habsburg ruled Austria for 6 centuries, leaving an enduring legacy. The Schonbrunn Palace was the summer residence of the Habsburg family. The Neptune Fountain, located in the Schonbrunn Gardens in Vienna, is a stunning Baroque masterpiece. Designed as the crowning element of the Great Parterre, situated at the foot of the hill behind the Schonbrunn Palace, the Neptune Fountain was conceived as a central part of the overall design of the gardens. It's famous for its grand scale, intricate details, and a vivid depiction of the ancient mythological figures. Neptune, with his trident, is surrounded by the allegorical figures representing various marine elements. The cascading water enhances the dramatic effect. The fountain not only serves as a beautiful focal point of the gardens, but also reflects the opulence and artistic tastes of the period. In 1776, the Austrian Empress Maria Theresa commissioned her court architect, Johann Ferdinand Hötzendorf von Hohenberg, to design the fountain. The sculptural group was created by the court sculptor Johann Christian Wilhelm Baer in his studio. The work was completed 4 years later, just before the death of the Empress. The fountain consists of a large basin, which is closed off from the slope by a curved retaining wall. In the middle of the wall is an artificial rock grotto, above which is the sea god Neptune on a shell chariot, supported by his trident. To his right kneels the sea nymph Thetis, the mother of Achilles. She asks Neptune for a storm at the sea to prevent the Trojan prince Paris from adopting Helen and taking her to Troy. Knowing of the prophecy that her son would die an early death in the Trojan War, she tries to persuade the sea god to prevent the impending war and thus save her son's life. To Neptune's left, at his feet, is a nymph with a cornucopia, a reference to the overflowing wealth of the seas. The main group is surrounded by 4 tritons, the tamers of the seahorses who pull Neptune's chariot. Neptune driving across the sea is a common theme in the Western art from the 16th to 18th centuries, being used as a symbol for monarchs controlling the destiny of their nations. In 1569, Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian II purchased a large floodplain of the Vienna River beneath the 60-meter high hill in a place called Meidling, located in the southwest of Vienna. Maximilian II intended to use the area as his hunting ground. There had been a small hunting lodge built by the previous owner on the land. Since then, the hunting lodge has undergone a series of modifications and expansions under several generations of Austrian monarchs. Especially in the 18th century, Empress Maria Theresa ordered extensive renovations and expansions to the palace between 1742 and the late 1770s, making it a formal summer residence for the imperial family. By the time, it became one of the most magnificent imperial palaces in Europe. Its 1,440 rooms accommodated all the family members of the Habsburg and the personnel. The name Schonbrunn, meaning beautiful spring in English, originated in a beautiful fountain at the foot of the hill. Currently, it's the famous Neptune Fountain. The palace was designed in Rococo style, which is a variant of a high Baroque, characterized by elegant and flowing architectural features, giving an impression of lightness. The palace was painted with a mixture of lime with green iron and sulfate. Over time, rain and oxidation made the palace appear yellow, known as a Schonbrunn yellow or Habsburg yellow, a trademark of almost all state buildings of Austria. Within the walls of the palace, the court life was jubilant. Although the building was designed for the formal life at the court, the constantly increasing family size injected boisterous young life into the palace. Even if the room layout followed the rules of the strict court etiquette, Maria Theresa generally allowed a much less formal atmosphere in the Schonbrunn than in the Hofburg. Her court was the center of social and cultural life. In addition to the lavish celebrations, there were numerous special events, such as music performances held in Schonbrunn Palace. In 1762, Maria Theresa invited the then 6-year-old Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart to the palace to play piano and violin for her. At the end of his performance, the child prodigy climbed onto the emperor's knee and gave her a kiss. In the center of the palace lies the Grand Gallery. This ceremonial hall, more than 43 meters long and 10 meters wide, is one of the world's most outstanding examples of interior design in the Rococo style. It's the architectural centerpiece of the palace. Its decor glorifies the Habsburg rule under Maria Theresa. The ceiling decoration consists of 3 frescoes by the Italian painter Gregorio Guglielmi. Enthroned at the center of the middle fresco are Maria Theresa as ruler of the Habsburg monarchy and her husband Franz Stephen as the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. They are surrounded by the personified virtues of a ruler: wisdom, power, and justice. Art, science, economic achievement, military prowess, agricultural abundance are symbolically represented in the various parts of the frescoes. The Grand Gallery is regarded as the heart of Schonbrunn's Baroque majesty. Designed as a venue for state occasions, balls, dinners, receptions, and similar occasions were generally held in the Grand Gallery. It didn't lose its importance after the end of monarchy in 1918. In 1961, at the height of the Cold War, U.S. President John F. Kennedy and the Soviet head of state Nikita Khrushchev met for talks in this room. The Habsburg imperial dynasty ruled Austria for 640 years. No ruling family produced more emperors, kings, and other aristocrat figures than the House of Habsburg. During their reign, the Habsburg family promoted the fine arts, assembled the famous collections and made their metropolis on the Danube into a world-class center of art and culture. Many Europe's cultural achievements today can be traced back to Schonbrunn Palace. The site of the palace and gardens of Schonbrunn is outstanding as one of the most impressive and well-preserved Baroque ensembles of its kind in Europe. It's an important symbol of the power and the influence of the House of Habsburg over a long period of European history, from the end of the 17th to the early 20th century. The park at the Schonbrunn Palace, which had originally been used as a hunting ground by the Habsburgs, eventually transformed into a picturesque Baroque complex under the Emperor Franz I Stephen in the mid-18th century. It was opened to the public around 1779, and since then has provided popular recreational opportunities for the Viennese population, as well as being a focus of great cultural and historical interest for international visitors. Extending for 1.2 kilometers from east to the west and approximately 1 kilometer from north to south, the park, along with the palace, was designated the World Heritage Site by UNESCO in 1996. In keeping with the principles of Baroque horticultural design, the gardens were an expression of a ruler status. The central axis of the palace formed the backbone of the gardens, whose symmetry was determined by orthogonal and diagonal axes. At the south side of the palace, the parterre with its strictly symmetrical beds occupied the largest open space in the gardens. In the mid-18th century, the beds consist of formal patterns made with strips of box hedging on colored gravel or sand, and were known as broderie patterns, since these motifs were mostly taken from embroidery patterns. In 1777, Johann Wilhelm Baer and his team of sculptors, the same team who created Neptune Fountain, created 32 statues of equal height on the tall plinths along the two lateral hedges in the Schonbrunn Gardens, representing mythological or historical figures. The majority of statues were designed after the models from antiquity. The statues are numbered from 1 to 32 on the side of the plinths to make the subjects easier to identify. The sequence starts at the eastern hedge in front of the palace facade and ends on the western side. Flora, with a wreath of flowers in her hand, is the goddess of flowers and blossoms. She also represents spring seasons and fertility. Paris and Helen. In Sparta, Paris met the beautiful Helen, wife of King Menelaus. He persuaded her to flee with him and then refused to give her back to Menelaus. This marked the beginning of the 10-year siege of Troy. Mars and Minerva. Minerva, goddess of the peaceful arts, wearing a helmet with a plume, stops the god of war Mars from drawing his sword from his sheath. The escape from Troy. The group of figures shows the Trojan hero Aeneas, who rescues his paralyzed father Anchises from the city conquered by the Greeks. In the Baroque period, the escape from Troy was seen as a parable of care and piety, which were among the most important princely virtues.